All right, let's talk about perhaps the biggest hole on the offense for the Texans, the wide receiver position. You can make a case that there are a lot of things that are set up nicely for CJ Stroud to succeed in his rookie year, but the wide receiver position, how concerning is the wide receiver position? I asked the question, and the answers might lead you to think that things might even be worse than we believe. Let's go inside the locker room here on YouTube.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the locker room on YouTube. You know what it is. Let's get it. Hey. Locker room.
All right. It is the locker room, number one source for Texans daily digital content. I'm Landry Locker. You can hear me Monday through Friday, 10 to 2 Central on Sports Radio 610 in the Odyssey app. And I asked a simple question today at Landry Locker on Twitter. What wide receiver, no tight end, so we're not talking tight ends, what wide receiver will lead the Texans in receiving in 2023? And there were a lot of different answers. There was a John Mechie. There was Robert Woods. There was Nico. There was another Nico. There was more Woods. There was a Hutchinson or Mechie. There was Tank Dell, Mechie, Tank, Nico. More Tank, Nico, whoever CJ jives most with off the jump. My guess is Tank, Mechie, Tank, Hutchinson, Tank, Nico or Mechie, Woods, a T.O. joke, haha. Nico Collins, someone says Jarvis Landry, Mechie, Tank, Mechie, Collins, Robert Woods. We had quote tweets, Mechie with yards, Nico with touchdowns, Woods, Collins, Mechie, Crumpler put out a whole, I guess he said Robert Woods. And I think there was even someone who said that the person's not even on the roster. Think about that for a second. I simply asked, who's going to lead this team in receiving? And we got 5 different answers as to who's going to lead this team in receiving. CJ Stroud is set up pretty nicely when it comes to the offensive line. I think this is a really good offensive line for a rookie quarterback. You've invested heavily in the offensive line, which some would argue might be the most important thing. You got your franchise left tackle. You got your right tackle coming off a good year. Just got his 5th-year option picked up. You just paid a guard, made him one of the higher-paid guards in the NFL. You drafted a guy in the 1st round, and you traded up to the 2nd round to get a starting center. So the offensive line is pretty set up. The tight end situation is pretty well set up. You've got one of the 5 best receiving tight ends in the last 3 years in Dalton Schultz. You've got Tegan Quintariano, who's pretty good. You've got Andrew Beck, who's pretty versatile. You've got Damian Pierce, who might be capable of being a 1,000-yard rusher. You've got Singletary, who's a good second back. So you have a lot of stuff set up. But at the wide receiver position, CJ Stroud is going to be throwing to worse wide receivers than he threw to in college, which that would have been the case in most places. But here especially, it's an interesting wide receiver room. So we will see what exactly they decide to do when it comes to the wide receiver position. But I want to go through and subscribe, like, and Jerome Kick says, please stop naming this Beck guy. They're going to do a lot of things with Andrew Beck. I would follow the money there if I were you. I don't think he's going to be like a receiving tight end. He's not even in the wide receiver discussion, but I mean, you follow the money. They gave him $2.5 million. He's a good blocker at fullback, and he's a decent tight end. They're gonna be more creative with Andrew Beck than you think. He's probably going to pleasantly surprise you. Front runner says, who cares? We'll see when the season starts. What's the point of even going on YouTube and watching football content? If that's you tell you what, front runner, that's a timeout. That's a timeout right there. We got to put this dude in timeout. who cares? Let's wait till the season starts. Kind of silliness is that? But let's just go through and look at the wide receiver position, because I do think there are some intriguing names. I don't think there's good names. It's a more balanced wide receiver room than last year, but it's probably one of the bottom 5 wide receiving cores on paper heading into the season. Although I don't look at it and say, sometimes the opportunity is just not there. So it's not like I look at this wide receiver room and say they could have done this. You only have so many assets and you have such little time. There wasn't like an awesome wide receiver free agent market. I actually thought they attacked that well. But sometimes when you're rebuilding a roster the way the Texans were, you're going to have to address certain things, and other things are going to have to catch up. And I think that's where the wide receiver room is right now. Let's start with the guy that we probably know the best here. And really one of the guys that has been here the longest, the most longevity. And that kind of speaks to how inexperienced this wide receiver room is. Nico Collins is going into his 3rd year. If you look at the rest of the room, Robert Woods is his 1st year in Houston. Noah Brown's his 1st year in Houston. John Mechie is heading into his 2nd season, but he hasn't stepped on the field. Tank Dell's a rookie. Xavier Hutchinson's a rookie. You have Amari Rodgers going into he came in the middle of last year, and then you have Jalen Camp, Johnny Johnson. So Nico Collins in this wide receiver room is actually one of the most long tenured guys on this roster. So Nico Collins in his career, though, he has 70 receptions, 3 touchdowns, and 927 yards. He's only played 24 games in 2 seasons. And there are a lot of questions about Nico Collins. The thing with Nico Collins for me is, what do you think the ceiling is for Nico Collins? Like, I think we can all agree. I think even the biggest Nico Collins optimist, I would think, can agree Nico Collins isn't going to be a number 1 receiver. Like, he might be the number 1 receiver here, but when I say a number 1 receiver, he would be the top receiver on half the teams in the league. That's the difference. When I talk about a number 1 receiver, I'm talking about a guy where whenever he goes to over half the spots, he's the number 1 receiver. Nico might be the best one in this situation, but I don't think any of us think that Nico Collins is ever going to be like a quality number 1 receiver. And I love the young man. We've talked to him multiple times. We've had him on the show. I think he's a very hardworking guy. There's been times where the stats don't back up how good he was actually playing. I think last year there was a lot of meat left on the bone because of poor quarterback play. But he hasn't been able to stay on the field. That was something that he talked about last year to us at training camp. And heading into year 3, really the thing about Nico Collins is you have the same questions about him this year that you did last year. So Nico Collins, I could see Nico Collins producing, but it's just a matter of, can he stay on the field? And was Nico Collins, was he a big victim of poor quarterback play? It's possible. All of the above can be true, but Nico Collins is a guy that's going to need to make you feel a little bit better about him this year. I think Nico Collins eventually ends up being a solid NFL player that can contribute. But as far as, I think this guy is going to be one of the 2 best wide receivers 3 years from now, I would have to see something to believe it. But again, there are some variables that he can't control, that sometimes they just stick with the player, which like health. There's also bad quarterback play. So we'll see. He'll get a chance to produce, and we'll see what happens with Nico Collins and how he produces this year. The next one is a guy, and if you follow this channel, subscribe, like, all that, it is The Locker Room, number 1 source for Texans daily digital content. It's a guy that I wanted them to sign last year. I called for it the second he got released, and that's Robert Woods. Robert Woods is not what he once was. I mean, it only makes sense. He hasn't been in the league as long, but Robert Woods last season, he did a couple of things that deserve a look when it comes to answering the question, who's going to catch the most passes for the Texans next year. Number 1, in an NFL season last year, he caught the most passes of anyone on this roster right now. He had 53 catches, 2 touchdowns in 2022. And most importantly, because this was one of the things that you heard most about Robert Woods, he was coming off a torn ACL, and Robert Woods played all 17 games. There's not a single Texans receiver last season that played all 17 games. Robert Woods did, coming off a torn ACL and being older than all of them. And 53 receptions is the most of any receiver here. He also has an advantage over a lot of these guys in that he's been running this system for the majority of his career. He was running it with the Rams. So when you talk about that Shanahan pipeline and what offensive coordinator Bobby Slowick is, Robert Woods has been running that. He stays healthy. He also is a guy that you can throw a lot of intermediate stuff to. He's not necessarily a burner. But when you talk about the swing passes that D'Amico Ryans was talking about, that's what Robert Woods is specialized in. And he played all 17 games coming off a torn ACL, had 53 catches, 2 touchdowns. He would be at the top of my list when it comes to bets for guy that has the most catches. Another guy that I like a lot, and I know that he was not a huge part of what they did in Dallas, but I think Noah Brown is someone to keep an eye on, specifically in this offense. The one thing that they say in Dallas that Noah Brown can do is Noah Brown can block. And there have also been times where Noah Brown has made some big plays for them in big situations. Now, he had a couple of costly drops last year, but Noah Brown's not an old player. Noah Brown has only been in the league for a few years, and Noah Brown has been on a team that has had way more attractive weapons than him, and at times they've been trying to run the ball. But he's a 27-year-old. He's a Buckeye like CJ Stroud. And last year, he has the second most catches in a season of any Texans receiver that's currently on the roster. He had 43 catches, 3 touchdowns, 12.9 yards per catch in 16 games. I think Noah Brown is someone that I know that people like Nico. I would keep a close eye on Noah Brown. Maybe being someone that produces more effectively than Nico Collins. I know that Nico Collins is probably a little bit more of the deep threat, but Noah Brown does a lot of the dirty work. He's been around for a while. He's been called upon whenever Michael Gallup's been out for the Cowboys. He's just kind of been stuck in a place where his first couple of years they had Amari and CeeDee Lamb and Dalton Schultz and Zeke Elliott, and then they had Tony Pollard. So he hasn't really been like a focal point. But on this team, given the fact that Noah Brown has produced at a higher level recently, more than most of these other guys, and the fact that it's kind of, I don't want to say he's like trying to stay in the league. I think Noah Brown will be able to hang around in the league, but this is his opportunity to really make a name for himself and be someone who's consistently called upon instead of someone who's called upon when someone else gets hurt. Noah Brown would be one of the guys I would closely keep an eye on when it comes to wide receivers. And we're not really talking about him. There was a few people who brought up Noah Brown, but we talk about Mechie, we talk about Woods. Keep an eye on Noah Brown. For real, keep an eye on Noah Brown because his teammates in Dallas say some pretty good things about him. There just really wasn't a place for Noah Brown. And they needed more explosiveness in Dallas. And they brought in Brandon Cooks for that. And they got Michael Gallup healthy this year. And they're paying Michael Gallup, and they also have CeeDee Lamb. So, I mean, on that receiving core, it's easy to see why you end up not producing at a high level. But in spot time, when Michael Gallup was out last year, 43 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns, 12.9 yards per catch, and you can block, and you know this system, and you can stay on the field, Noah Brown would be my sleeper. If there were a bet for this in Vegas and there were like some sort of odds, I don't know where Noah Brown would be on the odds board. Maybe it'd be like 6-1, 7-1, maybe even higher as far as wide receivers. Noah Brown would be someone that I would keep an eye on. The John Mechie thing is interesting, and everybody seems to be pretty high on John Mechie, and I'm not low on John Mechie. The thing that I've always said about John Mechie is just the fact that he's out there touching his toes in drills is a miracle. So I don't look at John Mechie and say I expect this guy to lead the team in receiving. I don't expect that, and I'm interested to see, what kind of shape is he in. He hasn't played in a long time. And what type of player is he? And if you go back to the draft when he was drafted, John Mechie, some people thought the Texans drafted him a little bit too early. John Mechie. There were some other options on there. I think there was Pickens that ended up in Pittsburgh. And again, we're just evaluating him as a player right now. We're not comparing his season to last season because again, no matter what he does, it's a miracle. There was Sky Moore with Kansas City. So as far as the player himself, we'll see what happens with John Mechie. But I do think like the concerns that you had, like if you go back to 2020 or 2022, before we figured out the stuff that happened to John Mechie, there were questions that you have with all players. How effective of a wide receiver can he be? Is he a guy who just lines up in the slot? Can he line up outside? How explosive is he? He had some explosive moments at Alabama. You take those questions and then you put a year behind it where he had to worry about much more important things. Then I just think expecting him to come here and lead the team with in receiving, it would be great. It would be awesome. It would be a good story. I don't know if he'd be eligible to be comeback player of the year. I would think so, but I'm not laying out heavy, lofty expectations on the guy. I'm just going to let him get on the field and see what happens and see how John Mechie looks. And that'll be interesting to see how that goes. Jerome Kick says Mechie was a better college wide receiver than Pickens and the other dude. I don't know who the other dude is. I don't know that he was better than Pickens, although Pickens got hurt. But Pickens was a very highly recruited guy at Georgia. There was bad quarterback play for a while with Pickens. I don't know who the other guy is, but I don't. Oh, then Sky Moore. Did you see Sky Moore's college stats? I don't think that Sky Moore was. I'm not going to say that he's the end all be all, but Sky Moore was pretty good in college. I would say, let me see Sky Moore's stats real quick. Let's pull these up. 95 catches, 1,292 yards, 10 touchdowns. His final year at Western Michigan. So 95, 1,292, and 10. I don't know about that. I don't think Mechie had that, but who knows? But I like Mechie. I just wouldn't lay out too high of expectations for Mechie. Just the fact that he's even on the field is great. Tank Dell's another guy that people bring up. Tank Dell led the nation in receiving last year. Tank Dell, is he going to be in the slot? They're going to line him up outside. Is he going to be more of a gadget / special teams guy? The Tank Dell thing will be interesting because I got to look at him when I was at rookie camp on Saturday. He's returning punts. There were only a few guys on the field, and he was catching some passes. He moves very, very well. He is, we talked a lot about Bryce Young's size. He is 162, like 165 pounds. So I would, I don't expect Tank Dell to lead the team in receiving. Dude wanted me to pull up Mechie stats. Yeah, he had 96 and 8, 11.42. So yeah, he had a good year at Alabama too. They're both really good receivers. We'll see what happens with Sky Moore. I think Sky Moore is going to be good in Kansas City. But Tank Dell, as far as Tank Dell goes, I just want to see how Slowick works. At first, I want to see the basis of the Slowick system, but I want to see how the Slowick factor works as far as getting guys like this involved. Like in the O'Brien days and the Tim Kelly days, you didn't really have, Mechie had 96, 11, 42, and 8. So yeah, he had 2 less touchdowns, but he also had a lot of other guys with him. So That's the Mechie put out some pretty damn good numbers. I will give him that. But as far as like being the top receiver, not feeling it as much. I want to see how Bobby Slowick works with guys like Tank Dell. Like in the O'Brien, Tim Kelly, Pep Hamilton days, I think there's no shot that Tank Dell leads this team in receiving. And quite frankly, if that happens, I don't know that that's necessarily a good thing. A guy that I like, I don't know how much he's going to produce, but Xavier Hutchinson out of Iowa State. Xavier Hutchinson had probably one of the most dominant receiving performances that I've seen against Texas in a while, to where he was unguardable. And I think he ended up with 10 for 150. He should have had more. I almost feel like Iowa State wasn't throwing him the ball enough. And eventually he had the drop and they ended up losing the game. But I was talking to John Harris at rookie minicamp this week, and I just asked him, hey, why did this guy fall when he fell? And his reason was he had a bad workout. Which, if that's the only reason, then I think you got a pretty good player. Because some guys just don't work out as well as others. So if you got him just because he had a bad workout, I'm okay with it. You also look back at Hutchinson before he transferred to Iowa State after community college. And Primetime Various says, I hated Hutchinson against my Sooners. I hated him against the Horns. He had offers at Utah, which was the top team in the Pac-12 at the time. He had offers at TCU, which was when Patterson was there, so pre-Dykes, and he had offers at OU. So Hutchinson was pretty decently coveted. Like Lincoln Riley tried to recruit Hutchinson to OU. So it's not like he just went to Iowa State, came out of nowhere. He was a 3-star guy originally. He had to go community college route. Then he ended up transferring. He chose to go to Iowa State instead of Oklahoma, TCU, and Utah. And if you watched him play, like if you're a Big 12 fan and you watched him play, he did his thing against Big 12 competition consistently, which some people will roll their eyes and say, well, they don't play defense in the Big 12, which is fair enough. But Xavier Hutchinson, I think he's a guy to look out for. I don't know how he fits. I don't know if there's going to be like a developmental part for him. But if you just look at him out there, he stands out. Now, he wasn't out there with these other guys. He was just out there with the rookies. But as far as being out there with the rookies, Hutchinson looked pretty good. And it seems like a lot of people are kind of warming up to Hutchinson and getting a little bit excited about him. Other X factors and guys at the bottom of the roster, Amari Rodgers, who showed some things last year. Didn't see him very long, but Amari Rodgers, Jalen Camp, Johnny Johnson, these are camp guys. Although I could see a scenario in which Amari Rodgers finds his way on the team, but he's going to have Tank Dell in front of him. He's going to have Mechie in front of him. So it could be a pretty big uphill battle for him. Someone threw out the possibility of someone not being on the roster being the top receiver. I think it was young Ari Gold that said that. I don't think that would be like the craziest thing to think that someone could come here and lead this team in receiving, because there's going to probably be some wide receivers released that are of the same caliber of the players that we previously mentioned. But I think the top receiver is on this team. I think they're gonna try to make do with what they got. Now they'll bring in receivers during camp. They'll bring in a couple, but I don't know how urgent they feel this wide receiver position is at the moment, because as Primetime brings up, I think there's going to be a huge emphasis on tight ends in this offense. When you talk about Dalton Schultz, you talk about Quintariano, and you talk about some of the other stuff that they can do, I could see Singletary being used a lot. I think there's gonna be a lot of creativity when it comes to how Bobby Slowick figures this out. And furthermore, there's not a lot of options when it comes to just bringing in a wide receiver off the street. There'll be some, but there's not a lot. Justin King Hughes says Robert Woods is not exciting. Yeah, I mean, he's not DeAndre Hopkins. He's not Andre Johnson. He's probably not even Will Fuller when Will Fuller was doing his thing. And he's not Brandon Cooks at this point, many people feel. But on this team, the excitement when it comes to the wide receiver position is probably going to have to be put on hold. So that's kind of where we're at. The DeAndre Hopkins questions, I don't think DeAndre Hopkins is an option to come here, although I do wonder what that price is at this point. It was believed to be a second. Now a little bit more time has gone by. He's kind of slowed his roll. He's come out and said that he's not looking for a new contract. He was playing like, which team should I go to? And then he said that he wasn't going anywhere. So I do wonder what's going to happen with the nuke market. I just don't think anyone's looking to give DeAndre Hopkins another look. Miguel says kick the tires on Julio Jones. I think those tires have been kicked raw at this point. I don't think that Julio has much left. And if you're bringing in Julio Jones, and I would call it the ghost of Julio Jones, is that really worth pushing Nico Collins or pushing Noah Brown back on the roster? Because if you can find out what is Nico now? Nico's 24, 25 years old, and Noah Brown's not even 30. He's a few years away from 30. If you can figure out whether or not those guys can be pieces for multiple years, what are you really gaining from Julio Jones right now? It will be interesting to see how CJ Stroud looks with the tight ends and with the wide receivers and really in this system. How much are they going to run? D'Amico Ryan said the other day that he wants this to be a running back by committee type of joint, running back by committee type of thing, which, okay. If Singletary's capable of that and you can save Pierce, more power to you. But the running back by committee thing will be interesting. Darius asked if Will Fuller retired. I think so. There was remember the Miami thing? It got real weird with Will Fuller where you thought he was going to be out for the year. Then he was back. Then there was suspensions and all that type of stuff. Will Fuller, he's that ship's definitely sailed. And we're getting a lot of Marvin Harrison Jr. Type of hype, which we'll see. So final verdict, who do you think leads this team in receiving at the wide receiver position? Put it in the comments, subscribe and like. Let's go on the other side of the rock, though, and talk about adding depth to an area that probably could have used a little bit of depth, despite the fact you don't feel too bad about it. And that's the cornerback position. Shaq Griffin signed by Nick Caserio, a deal worth up to $4.5 million. Pro Bowler in 2019. I like this move. I like this move a lot. Getting a lot of tank love, by the way. You can tell there's a lot of U of H folk around here. But Shaq Griffin coming in, look, the body of work that he has when he's coming in, would you agree? Is it fair to say that it's more impressive than the body of work that Steven Nelson had coming onto the team last year? I think we can all agree that the answer is yes. And you like the season that Steven Nelson had last year. I think the answer to that would also be yes. You also feel okay about the secondary. You actually probably feel better about this secondary than you felt about this secondary in a long time. You probably feel better at corner than you felt about the cornerbacks in a real long time. So when you look at Derek Stingley, who you think is going to be a cornerback one eventually, you look at Jalen Petrie, who you think is going to be a really, really, really good safety eventually. Might actually already be one. You look at Jimmy Ward, who's a versatile guy, who's a veteran for all these guys. And then you got Steven Nelson. You got Shaq Griffin. You got Desmond King. You got Tavier Thomas in the slot. This is as good of a depth as you've had in the secondary in a long, long time. And there was a time where the cornerbacks, the DBs, and the offensive line was the biggest concern for this squad for a long time, where you would go into drafts and you would say, are they going to take a corner or are they going to take an offensive lineman? What are they going to do? You hope that these are the two strengths of the team because this is what the most has been invested in. And eventually you want your front office to be able to have payoff on their investments. Rolo asks, is Shaq Griffin better than Steven Nelson? It's hard to say right now. At his best, he was a Pro Bowl caliber player and he was the top corner on the market before he went to the Urban Meyer situation. But when you start talking about back injuries, which is what he had last year, you got to see how he comes back because back injuries ain't no joke. And the bottom line is there's a reason that Jacksonville got rid of him, and there's a reason that the Texans were able to sign him for the deal that they did. So I would like to say that he's better than Steven Nelson. Like at his best, he was better than Steven Nelson. But it's going to be interesting to see how he comes through. He might come to camp and not be able to play and they get rid of him. It's that type of situation. It's that low risk for there. Who's the system fit? Juan's asking that. I would, I don't pretend to be like the Mr. X's and O's guy. You guys know that. Steven Nelson, the way that he played last year and the way that he typically plays, seems like he's a really good system fit for DeMeco Ryans' defense. Like he seems like he's a really, really good fit for this defense. Shaq Griffin played with Pete Carroll in Seattle, and we know that that's a little bit different of a system than what DeMeco does. You're going to see a lot of cover three, I think, in DeMeco's. But as far as system fit, I think just from the outside looking in, before we see Shaq go out there, I thought Steven Nelson seemed like a really good system fit for the way that he played, how physical he was last year. B says, you guys are setting yourself up for disappointment. First pick 6 by CJ will be devastating. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. I don't know who's setting themselves up for disappointment. I think anyone in their right mind has to believe that CJ Stroud is going to struggle in some way, shape, or form. Like every rookie quarterback struggles. So I don't have extreme expectations for CJ Stroud, just the week 1 starter and grow and develop and go through the growing pains. That's kind of the peace of mind that you get right now as a Texans fan, where you're excited. It's not doom and gloom. The team, based on the way that you've improved it, the way that you drafted, it could be really, really good. But when you have a long-term, you think, person at a certain position, whether it's DeMeco Ryans as a head coach, whether it's Bobby Slowick as an offensive coordinator, whether it's CJ Stroud as a quarterback, you're willing to go through growing pains. I don't think anyone is expecting CJ Stroud to go out there and not throw an interception or a pick 6. That's expected. Anyone who doesn't expect that, they're expecting something to happen that's never happened in NFL history, especially when you talk about the gaps at receiver. So I don't think anyone's really setting themselves up for disappointment at all. Blue Boy 59, shout out to you. Nelson and King are good DBs, but they are slow as dirt. Does anybody remember what Miami did to us last year? As good as Nelson and King are, they cannot keep up with speedy wide receivers. They just can't. All right, let's slow down a little bit, just a little bit. There's not many teams that are keeping up with the speed of Miami's receivers. I mean, I saw some all-pro caliber corners getting cooked by them last year. I mean, you're talking about Jalen Waddle and you're talking about Tyreek Hill. So, yeah, Nelson and King, They might have gotten cooked by Miami last year, but I would challenge you to find me a couple of corners, especially the caliber that we're talking about there. We're talking about guys that you signed off of the street that aren't going to get cooked by Miami. And that duo of wide receivers. So I wouldn't completely judge them too much on that. Just plain Dave, what do you think of Jarvis Landry to the Texans, or would the price tag be too much? I just don't understand the point for either perspective. I think Robert Woods is kind of like the Jarvis Landry type of leader. He's a guy who knows the system. He's kind of a mentor guy. Like if you only had young guys and you didn't have Robert Woods, and I know that they're different style of players kind of, then maybe you could talk me into Jarvis Landry, but I don't understand the point of Jarvis Landry at this point. Now, he did run the system in Cleveland, but with Noah Brown being younger, with needing to get a look at Nico Collins, I just don't think that the production of Jarvis Landry warrants pushing those guys back and pushing them to the side, especially if they're fully healthy. So I would be no go on Jarvis Landry. I think Jarvis Landry should be pushed back a little bit. I'm okay on Jarvis Landry. Primetime V, could you see the Texans going in to the season with 3 QBs on the roster? I could. I definitely could. I think that there's a possibility that maybe they find a situation for Mills that better fits him, where you remember the Ryan Finley trade where it was like a 6th or 5th or that swap crap that Caserio did. I could see that. If it were a Keenum and this didn't happen, I know much to the joy of a lot of people. If it were a Keenum and Davis Mills quarterback competition, I think it would have been a decent competition. But given the fact that CJ is going to start and you ideally don't want your quarterback to play, Case Keenum, if they keep 2 quarterbacks, he would be the second quarterback. If that makes sense, because Case Keenum's been around a while. He might be better than Davis Mills at this point, I would think. But even if he wasn't, and let's say that Davis Mills was here and Case Keenum was here just at this point in their career, you go with Case Keenum because Case Keenum is a better resource for CJ Stroud than Davis would be if you're going to keep 2. But I could see him keeping 3. But if they keep 2, I think it's going to be Keenum. Aaron Butler, are you Texans really sending a rookie quarterback against the Ravens defense week 1? They are. And it's not ideal. Baltimore last year, actually, if they'd played better offense, they played championship caliber defense last year. I think Mina Kimes had the breakdown. And even against Cincinnati, if they hadn't had that fumble at the 1-yard line and they had better offense, and maybe they would have involved J.K. Dobbins a little bit, they might have won that game. It's definitely not the ideal challenge. The one thing I will say, and I brought this up today, is Baltimore is implementing a new offense, and they're doing so with the quarterback. And I'm the biggest Lamar Jackson fan there is. I was very happy to see Lamar Jackson get his bread, but they're doing so with a quarterback who requires a lot of, for lack of a better term, a lot of attention. He requires a lot of, they basically put together a brand new offense for Lamar Jackson when he was MVP, like Greg Roman. They talk about him just, implementing a new offense on a note card to fit around Lamar Jackson. And it worked great. Now, maybe eventually the whole thing hit a wall and you needed to move on and implement a new offense. But they're having to do that. And a lot of times it takes a while during a season to be able to do that, for a wide receiver to get on the same page with his receivers. He's got rookie wide receiver in Zay Flowers. He's still got Bateman out there. He's got Odell Beckham Jr., who didn't go to their voluntary football school, whatever that is. They got their first OTA next week, I think on the 22nd. So I know everyone says that, and by everyone, I mean most people that I talk to, at least in like this circle, that you want to get Baltimore later on in the season. I don't disagree with that, like to a certain point. My thing is, I don't think there's ever a right time to play Baltimore. And I think a case can be made that given the fact that there's a new offense and given the fact Lamar's going to have to learn a new offense and given the fact he's going to have to get on the same page with his wide receivers, I think you might be getting them at the right time. Now, the smart-ass Baltimore fan that says, you Texans are going to come in here and do this, will probably say, well, look at the Texans. They're doing this, this, this. True. There's no team in the NFL that's sitting there looking at their schedule saying, oh, well, we got to worry about the Texans. That they haven't earned that respect. But I'm just talking about the actual opponent and when the ideal time would be to face them. The defense is the defense. The defense is going to go out there and be one of the top defenses in the NFL. Offense, it's just going to be a well-oiled machine right off the top. Like Lamar Jackson's going to go from running an offense that was specifically built around him and catered to him, and he's all of a sudden going to get Odell Beckham Jr., who hasn't played ball in damn near 2 years, and Zay Flowers is going to be a well-oiled machine. It could happen, but there's a lot of times when it takes a little bit of time for the offense to be implemented. So we'll see what happens. It's going to be I don't even know if it's going to be a close game or anything, but I do think the start of the season is, you can make a case, a good time to face the Baltimore Ravens. Some other comments. Smokey says, I heard Quinnen Williams, I guess you're talking about, scrubbed his socials of everything Jets and wanted to be traded. Do you think it's possible the Texans target him because he will put the cherry on our defense? I like the interior D-line right now with Rankins, Collins, Ridgeway. I like Quinnen Williams. I just don't know if the Texans are in a situation where they would pay him right now. I'm a big fan of him. Seems like a good dude. He's obviously from Alabama. They like Alabama guys. I think the Jets worked that out. I think Robert Saleh is a player's coach, and they probably worked that out. My question would be, like, at what price? You would have to give me like a price. Like, are you trading a 2 for Quinnen Williams and then paying him? I would just have to know what the prices would be. Nathan says, I don't care about any of this. I'm just so damn happy to be a Texan this season. It's good feeling after the last few years, 9-8, calling it. So you're feeling yourself. I like that. At Tyson, unbelievable. Oh, you're talking about the sim on the channel. Yes. Pappy Smear says Jacob Martin staying unsigned. Thank goodness. I'm sorry. Jacob Martin was a good dude. That Rock Boys bit was kind of an ass whooping for me. I don't know how y'all felt about it. That was one of the, probably, like, if you had me list the most annoying things that athletes in Houston have done in the last 5 years, the Rock Boys would be a top 5 thing for me. The guitar thing with Whitney Merciless and Jacob Martin and who else was in it? Barkevius Mingo. I hated the Rock Boys bit more than anything. And then you had Jacob Martin continuing to try to keep it going. Robert Saleh didn't want him in this system. I just don't like, what is Jacob Martin going to do? Is he just going to come in and be like a specialty rush guy? Do they really need that at this point? I'm okay if Jacob Martin doesn't come here, because I'll be honest, and this is one of my many probably irrational things, I hated that Rock Boys bit. B says, you're assuming CJ Stroud starts game 1. This is based on what? Yeah, I'm assuming that he starts game 1. That's based on common sense. That's what I'm basing that on, but we'll see what happens with CJ. And I'm not you can ask people in here. I was the Bryce Young guy. I was the I can wait on a quarterback guy. But I mean, if you draft CJ Stroud to let him watch Case Keenum or Davis Mills play week 1, all right. have fun with that. Miguel says Roy Lopez stinks. Roy overachieved a couple of years, and then last year, I actually think he made a mistake of losing too much weight. He's fighting for his life right now. There are guys that are much more capable of holding their own on the interior. Roy's going to have a really, really, really solid camp to hang around. And right now he's fighting an uphill battle. So we'll see what happens with Roy Williams. But yeah, that was a thing. Yes, Justin agrees on the Rock Boys thing. Matt agrees on the Rock Boys thing. Miguel says, what was worse, the Rock Boys or slime season? Rock Boys by far, man. Slime season was tight. I know we're rewriting it a little bit, and there's some hurt feelings with Deshaun Watson. That was tight when Deshaun would do that with the finger. Funny thing, we actually the show In the Loop, which you can hear 10 to 2 on the Odyssey app. We actually did the slime season with Deshaun Watson. He came in studio, and we did the slime season pick. And then as soon as all the off-field stuff happened, we kind of had to punt on that. But I like the slime season bit. I liked it a lot. Bulls on parade over Rock Boys, 100%. Cebu asking, all right, this is a good question. The top 10 things athletes did in Houston that annoyed me the most. Top 10 list. Let's do this in no particular order. And this is going to be like irrational stuff, not like I'm not talking about like Deshaun Watson off-field type of stuff or like demanding trades or anything. So this is going to be like irrationally bothered me. Rock Boys is up there. The Jack Easterby It All Matters signs annoyed the crap out of me. They're like TJ Maxx signs around the spot. Let's see. This is a good question. Like as far as just Brandon Cooks arch got old too. I mean, he was doing that. Brandon Cooks was doing like the arrow when they were down 17. So the arrow, the Rock Boys, the Easterby It All Matters signs. 5 years. So we're going back to 17. I won't put the Roy Lopez dance on there. I was fine with the Roy Lopez dance. The David Coley chewing that damn gum, and I'm a gum smacker myself. David Coley chewing that damn gum was on the list. Trying to think about other bits. What were some other bits? Y'all can give me some, but the gum chewing, the Archer, the Rock Boys. There were a few things. Aaron Butler really, as a Ravens fan, I think your young roster will be overwhelmed by the Ravens bully style of ball. It will be a shock to the youngsters. Yeah, that could happen, sir. Like that probably should happen. Instead of pissing their leg like they have the last couple of years. But yeah, I don't know. I don't even know what kind of style of ball the Ravens play at this point with the new OC. So I have no clue. But yeah, that would be. I agree that Roy Lopez lost too much weight. Oh God, Miguel hates the dusty surgery gloves. Why didn't he just wear batting gloves? All right, I'll say this, and I know this isn't popular. The Josh Reddick woo got a little bit tiring. That got a little bit tiring for me. The Josh Reddick freaking woo, little too much for me. Justin King asks, what does "you're going to be on midday forever" mean? So there was an interview that I did. It was like a 50-minute interview in New York on WFAN. It was actually pretty funny. And they put me with this guy named Steve Summers, who's like friends with Jerry Seinfeld, but he's like a old school New York, like sticky, like that type of guy. And he put me on, and we just took calls from New Yorkers, and we just talked crap the whole time. And I was talking crap to Summers about the Astros cheating. He was talking crap about the Yankees, and we just talked for like 50 minutes. And he's just a sticky dude, and he was just having some fun with me. So he said, "You're going to be on midday forever now." So actually, I should probably post that video because it was pretty funny. Yes, tough, smart, dependable bothered the hell out of me. That was trash. Letterman's jacket was too long ago. And I actually don't think the Letterman jackets were bad. I actually think they were badass. They just played really, really poorly. Lonnie Johnson's reality show. Thank you. All right. So we have Coley Gum Chewing. We have Rock Boys. We have the Brandon Cooks Arch. Josh Reddick Woo. The dusty gloves don't bother me as much, although I thought he should have worn batting gloves. Lonnie Johnson, remember Life of Lotto, which was like 3 episodes? Lonnie Johnson doing a reality show near the top of that list. That was awful. The dude snitched on himself for showing up late to a workout. And he actually edited it and put it on there that he was late to a workout and said it was a normal thing. Life of Lotto is on the list too. We'll get to 10 before the end of this. I might, you know what? This might be a segment. The 10 things that have annoyed me the worst. You know what, you guys, this is why I like talking to the people. 10 most recent annoying bits. So we got Rock Boys, The Arch, All Matters, Life of Lotto. Oh, God. I hated that so much. That was so bad. We should do like a Life of Lotto watch party just to go back and think about that. The Arian Foster was tight though. The bow, and that was a while ago. That was a long, long time ago. The Rock Boys. Surely if Jacob Martin comes back, he's not going to try to like keep that going on. Will Fork was an awesome personality. Someone says they miss Alfred Blue. You're lying. You don't believe that. Texans are not eligible for Hard Knocks. Someone's asking about Hard Knocks. But yeah, there's definitely a list of bits that drive me absolutely nuts. Lonnie tweets. Oh God, Lonnie. Oh. His tweets before games, his tweets after anything happened. That was the worst. That was the absolute worst when Lonnie Johnson would yeah, my thing's typing now. When Lonnie Johnson would come on, and anytime anything happened, Lonnie Johnson was just talking crap about it. No matter what. And it was really weird. Like, I'm not like if you want to do your thing, go ahead and do your thing. But the way that Lonnie Johnson would talk after stuff would happen with the Texans was really just pretty insane. If you think about it. There would be like a Deshaun Watson, like situation. All of a sudden life of, Lonnie Johnson's talking about. And I remember when he was talking about getting an extension at the one time. That dude was a beating. He was an absolute beating. And now he's just kind of trying to hang around the game. My show prep thing started typing. Someone's asking about General Mills. You guys got to stop. The General Mills bit was a little bit bad. Mills Mania was up there, but that really wasn't his own doing. That wasn't his own doing. But those Lonnie Johnson tweets, man. It was outrageous. I mean, my man was calling out the organization. My man was talking smack. My man was, when he went to Kansas City, he said, "Thank God I'm free." Remember, didn't Lonnie Johnson come out? Lonnie Johnson came out and said that he asked to be released. Remember that? Remember when he said he asked to be released to go to the Chiefs and then he was cut like a week later? Bubba talking about Lonnie Johnson and Kevin Johnson were terrible draft picks. They both lost this case. I like KJ, man. I don't know about y'all, but I actually thought KJ was going to be good before he started getting hurt. KJ, like for as much as KJ struggled, and it was rough watching him on the back end the last couple of years here. Although he did go play at some other squads, man, KJ would go in there and lay the wood. KJ had a lot of heart. He just ended up getting hurt. Like he just ended up getting hurt and not staying healthy. But he would go up there and challenge cats. Like would I go back in time and draft Kevin Johnson first round? No, I would not. But KJ would go out there and lay some wood. I actually liked Kevin Johnson. He was cool. He was a cool guy too. I was a big fan of him. Appreciate everyone for rolling through. Talking about the wide receiver and the wide receiver position, perhaps the biggest uncertainty with the Texans. But again, I would say if to revisit it, put a bow on this. Nico Collins, if we're just doing a sentence on each guy, same questions this year as we had last year. Robert Woods, sturdy, not ideal when you have a good receiver room, but in this room, he's just what they need. Noah Brown, don't sleep on him. Don't sleep on Noah Brown. Mechie, low expectations, but reason for optimism. Tank Dell, the Slowick factor. How is Bobby Slowick going to use him? Xavier Hutchinson, a lot of intrigue with the rookie. And then the rest of them, you can make up your own sentences. I don't have a sentence for Amari Rodgers, but I appreciate everyone for coming through. Subscribe, like, roll along. I'm going to be on tomorrow from 10 to 2. John McClain, he's going to explain himself. He's going to explain these comments that he had about CJ Stroud not going to the podium.
Let the rookies talk at all at this time. And what team do y'all think that is?
Oh, I think I know. I know which one it is.
And who is left here from the Patriots that has had the Patriot way ingrained in him for 20 years? Yeah, this is not D'Amico. This is Nick Caserio. Nick Caserio has come up somehow with some cockamamie idea about why CJ Stroud and Tank Dell should not be available. And you said the public may not care. I'll guarantee you they care. I'll guarantee you, if you are a fan or you're a suite holder or you're a sponsor, Nick Caserio is thumbing his nose at you because you want to know what the quarterback thinks and the most popular player from the University of Houston thinks, but you won't get to find out. And that is all Nick Caserio, and it's preposterous. Other rookie quarterbacks get to talk. I'd love for Nick to address this to us and say, here's why I think these two guys shouldn't talk at the rookie minicamp. And if you're a fan, I think you'd really want to know what they think about their first experience with the Texans. So they say they're going to let us talk to them at OTAs. I'll be interesting to see if it's the first OTA. You know, since Bill O'Brien got here, and then Caserio and Jack Easterby, they want to neuter rookies. They want to cut their footballs off. And I've seen it happen to so many players. Fortunately, they couldn't do that to Dameon Pierce. He was just too good. And CJ Stroud said all the right things when he talked to us after the draft. He said all the right things to us when he got here. He was funny. He made people laugh. He's been at Ohio State in the Big Ten. He comes from California. He knows how to talk. Now, Tank Dell is a great talker, as you guys know. I don't know if he's like Pierce. I don't think they could cut both footballs off, and he's not going to change. But I just think that is preposterous. Fans, want to see the top players. They're fired up about it. And the way they're going to see it is by listening, reading, or watching, but they're not available, which is preposterous.
Yeah,
I suspect that this bothers you, John. I don't know. I don't know if I'm.
It bothers me because it's so unnecessary.
Yeah.
And it should bother you guys because wouldn't you like to know what Stroud thought about his first day? I would.
There's some people that side with John McClain, actually. And there's some people that disagree. But you know what? We got John tomorrow at 11. Fire up the Odyssey app, AUDACY, Sports Radio 610. Fun time. Appreciate everyone for coming through. Good times ahead, good days ahead, good content ahead, daily content. No days off when it comes to this Texans game. And no matter what happens, just always remember, folks, we are all in this together. Can't wait to hear what McClain has to say. Can't wait to talk to y'all tomorrow. Have a good one.
You know what it is. Let's get it. Hey, locker room. Yeah, we in the locker room. Texas talk. Yeah, you know what we about to do. Localize every angle's what we really do. We the source. We the pulse of the city.